Hello and welcome back to the StoreHero podcast. This week I'm joined by Charlie Williams, founder of Paradigm Media. Charlie is dialing in from the sunny south of France today. Charlie, how are you?
Good, mate. How are you?
Pretty good, pretty good. The weather in Ireland certainly isn't maybe as nice where you are today. Whereabouts are you in France?
I'm in Cannes at the moment. We've been dotting around a little bit. We've been to Monaco. We've been to Menton, which is actually crossing the Italian border as well. But spent a little bit of time in Nice. So yeah, we just came out here for a month to get out of the UK weather, really.
Nice, nice, nice. And you're not taking part in the 100-meter sprint for the UK this year.
No, I'm more of a javelin guy.
Very good, Charlie. Listen, tell us a bit about who you are, what you do.
Yeah, so I'm Charlie Williams. I run a paid media marketing agency based in Manchester in the UK. We've got a team of 9 now, and we've got 26 clients at the moment who are UK and US based. We run their paid media and do their high performance creative for them as well. So we've been going for, I founded the agency in February of 22, and then I went full time in, I believe, July of 22. So been full time for a little over 2 years now, and it's in the last year especially the team's grown quite a lot, and I've got big growth plans as well going into 2025.
Nice, nice, nice. Okay, let's get down to it. I suppose when you get a new client, I mean, what are the first some of the first things that you would look at when you open up their Meta Ads account specifically? And maybe what are some of the good and maybe the bad signals that you might see?
Well, obviously, by the time we're auditing their ad account, we've already had a chat with them about kind of their expectations and how far away they are from their expectations. So we're looking at where they are in line with kind of their targets, right? So how far away is the CPA from where they want it to be? So we're looking at the hard stats to begin with, the CPA, the return on ad spend, and those kind of metrics. But then secondary to that, we then go and looking at the soft stats. So click-through rates, cost per click, CPMs, frequency, and those metrics to try and gain an understanding of why maybe the hard stats are not where they want them to be.
Do they
Um,
always have an indication of what the target CPA should be, or is that something that often falls on your shoulders?
that's something that 80% of the time falls on our shoulders. It's
Yeah.
based on looking at kind of their AOV and gaining an understanding in that first conversation of what their margins roughly are and understanding what a decent CPA would look like. It most of the time does fall on our shoulders. The odd time you get a brand who, they've got their numbers locked in and they know what they want. But yeah, most of the time it's on us to be fair.
Nice, nice, nice. And okay, so maybe talk us through maybe some of the green flags and the red flags that you might see when you kind of take on a new client.
Well, the green flags are always around content production. They've got good content production systems. They're producing a lot of content for organic and for paid, and just raw content as well. Like they've got content production systems in place with creators and in house as well, just so that they have a system where content's not a problem, right? So that's the biggest green flag, and it's the most important thing. And I would say another green flag is a brand that has the unit economics locked down, so they know what their targets are, they know where they need to be, and they're not just plucked them from the sky either. They're based on their actual numbers and their actual margins and that kind of thing. There's some green flags. Probably sounds like it should be obvious, but it's not nowadays, right? And I think some red flags are probably the opposite of that. Some red flags for me are when we're speaking to brands about coming on. First of all, how many agencies have they worked with, right? That's always a red flag question. Sometimes if they've worked with like 3+ agencies and all of them have been terrible according to their word, then that's a little bit of a red flag because it just gives me the impression that they're probably looking for a scapegoat rather than a growth partner, right?
Yeah.
And also poor content production systems. They don't produce any content. They're not working with creators. They don't understand the importance of content. That's a huge red flag because then we're going to have to try and sell the importance of that to them as well, right? So there's some big red flags for me as well, and also not knowing the unit economics. Like we bring on a lot of brands, even still now, and definitely when I first started as a freelancer, who they didn't even know what their margins are. They don't even know what the gross margin is. They don't even know how much they're paying for the product, which is scary, but it's so true. So there's some red flags.
That's a
Yeah,
lot more common than people would actually think as well. We
way
see it
more
all the
common.
time too.
I would say that it's well now with where we're at now, we're now bringing on bigger brands to be fair, like brands that are at 7 figures and they want to get to 8 figures, and brands that are in that kind of
Nice.
ballpark. So these guys are a lot better, but probably a year ago with the clients we were bringing on then, it was more so brands that didn't know their unit economics than the ones who did. But they were still doing decent numbers, but they just had great product market fit, and that was it really. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
I think, yeah, I think when, CAC was much cheaper, I think a dirty secret of the entire industry was that there was a lot of businesses out there that were knocking it out of the park. But if you really ask the owner, the founder, whoever was running the paid ad accounts to explain the underarching fundamentals of the business from a unit economics perspective, it just kind of worked, but it was kind of the brands didn't maybe need to fundamentally understand how it all knitted together because it was being masked by really cheap advertising on Facebook and Google. But those days are kind of gone, and the brands can't really scale like that, and definitely they can't really scale confidently, at least from what we're seeing anyway.
COVID was the worst time for that because COVID just opened the floodgates for when the market like just peaked. It just opened the floodgates for like average to poor like business practices in terms of like you can upload a white static as an ad and it'll just get a 10x ROAS, but it's so good for the short term, but it's so bad for like development as a business owner because people start increasing their costs, moving to bigger fancy warehouses and all these other things. And
Yeah,
as soon as the market realigns and there's a correction, CAC increases, CPMs increase, and the profit margin just gets murdered. And that's kind of what happened. And so many businesses we saw during that kind of hangover period after the peak of the market during COVID, when the world went back to somewhat normal. So many businesses didn't survive that transition because of those things that we just said, which was scary.
you kind of put a firm emphasis there on the green flag side of things in terms of brands, having that strong creative process internally for creating good quality content production. Is there any brands that you could point to like as best in class in the D2C space in the UK that, really, if brands were looking to for inspiration that just have the creative process, creative content production down to a T?
Client of ours I have to touch on because they're great at this Legend London. They're in the fashion space. They're shooting on a weekly basis, like their content.
Weekly basis.
Yeah, weekly basis they shoot
Wow.
it. Their content production systems are probably the best that I've seen in the UK in the fashion space. So we're lucky to work with them. Another brand that obviously you'll hear about all the time, Space Goods. They're
Yeah.
one of the best in the space. And those are UK based. And then when you're talking about US based, I mean, where do we start? Like you've got the true classics of the world and the brands like that who are just killing it. But yeah, I would say in the UK, I'd say Legend London. I'd say Space Goods. Say Surreal are in the UK. They're pretty good. Obvi over in America. So there's quite a few that come to mind.
I was actually at an event here in Dublin yesterday, and a very similar question was asked, and Space Goods and Surreal both came up, and there were only three answers, by the way, and those two came up again. So we'll drop links to both of those brands in the show notes here because I completely agree with you. Those two brands really seem to have it locked down, and you can really see it. On that topic, I suppose, I suppose in meta performance and meta ad account structure, just in general has changed in terms of how you approach it from a strategic point of view a lot in the last 5 years. I don't think creative was important 5 years ago as it is today. As you kind of mentioned, in the Helicon days within COVID, that white static image, 10 ROAS, boom, Chad scaling absolutely to the moon. That obviously is not the case anymore. How important is creative for brands?
It's the most important. Obviously, aside from like the general 0 to 1, like have a good gross margin, have a great product market fit. Obviously, they're the most important things. But once you get past those bits, creative is the most important thing. Like it's so important, and we're living in like we're knee deep in the TikTok era now, where consumers are just so used to great content. Like, and if you don't have that, it's a problem. And like you can sell a bad product with good marketing and with good content 100%. So many companies do it. Now it might hurt your LTV, but that's how, sorry, if your LTV is not strong, obviously you're not necessarily going to keep customers off the back of a bad product, right? But great marketing can get a lot of customers. So I think that's how important creative is. It's literally everything, like everything that we do now. I always say to brand owners, like when they're talking about their current agency, when we're in that beginning stage, those early conversations, are they providing the creative or are you providing it? And if they say we're providing it, I say to them, well, you're basically running the ads then. Like, if you're providing the creative and your agency is just pushing it live and that's it, you're doing 80% of the work. So the agency is redundant at that point, in our opinion. Like, we provide over 30 assets a month as a bare minimum to all of our clients. Creative is everything nowadays with paid media.
30 assets a month per brand.
Yeah, and most of our clients get a lot more than that as well. I've got four designers in house, and then so all of our clients get so much content and they need it as well. Like obviously, as you know, because you know me, I'm a big Common Thread guy. I love Taylor Holiday and the guys over there. And I was listening to them on a podcast the other week, and he was saying that from their clients, they've seen that one in every 94 creative tests is a winner. So if you're testing like 10 assets a month, which by the way is more than a lot of brands test that we speak to, you're finding one winning ad a year. Like you,
1 in 94.
one in every 94, they said, was the average amount of winners they found because Taylor was trying to explain how it's just a volume game. And he was saying one in every 94 creative tests is a winner. So if you put that into context, if you're testing 10 a month, you're only finding one winner a year, which is not enough to scale aggressively, is it? So yeah, that's how important creative is for
It's kind
sure.
of a depressing stat to hear, I'm not going to
Well,
lie.
that's why when we first started with creative, we were doing like 10 assets a month, but then I was like, it's not enough. Like, we need to pump the numbers up. And then if we're providing 30 a month and our clients provide the same or more, which they do now, then you're getting a winner every 2 months, right? And based on those numbers that I just said. Obviously, that's not always the case, but that's a rough kind of idea for you. But yeah, that's winning creative is what scales a business now. And but yeah.
So let's just say you get 40 new creatives on the first of the month. You have all of your campaigns from the previous month running. Talk me through your process about how you integrate the new creatives into the existing ad account.
Well, it's different every ad account, right? Every
Yeah.
ad account's different because the best practices are the best practices, but some ad accounts have their own kind of ways of working. So it's not a be all and end all, but this in some ad accounts we'd have like a creative testing campaign where we just build a new ad set with every new batch of content that we have and build it in within its own ad set. Some accounts we find better results by having like a testing slash scaling CBO campaign where Meta controls the budget and we just pump new creative in there all the time, and Meta will spend on winners and it won't spend on losers. So that's a more efficient way of doing it at scale. The problem with that method is a lot of clients are frustrated when they're providing 30 to 40 assets a month and only one of them spending, right? Because Meta's controlling the spend. But in that case, we always say like, what do you want, efficiency, or do you want to force spend on losers that are not going to be efficient, right? So they're kind of the two ways we would do it. In some accounts, we see better results with manual bids, cost controls, and big cap campaigns. In which case, we build all the creative into there, and whatever spends is obviously a winner, right?
So let's just say you pumped all the new creatives into one kind of CBO campaign. To your point, are you trying to find the winner there and then move it towards into its own campaign separately with cost controls?
If in the accounts where we're using like a testing set scaling CBO, we just leave it in there once it starts spending and it just stays in there because the problem with moving stuff is, and we used to see this a lot when we used to do when our approach was testing scaling campaigns separate. You'd find winners in testing, you move them to scaling and they just never perform the same. Once you
Don't,
move them, they
don't
just they
upset the
just
rhythm.
yeah, you don't upset the rhythm, don't upset the apple cart. So then that's why we were like, well, instead of moving stuff, why don't we just test and scale in the same campaign? That way, we never have to touch winners. We can just leave them. Once they start spending, they can just go. We can
Yeah,
just increase the budget and let them go. So that's why our kind of methodology changed with it. But so yeah, that's our approach now, and that's what we see working the best this year. To be fair.
nice. You touched on TikTok style content, but I suppose TikTok Shop, something that's coming to Ireland only in October, would you believe? We still don't have it. It's been kind of pandered at us for the last 2 years, but I think it's finally going to arrive in October. How many of your brands are actively on TikTok Shop, and have you any kind of interesting anecdotes or stats, or I suppose bits of advice around brands that maybe will be looking to leverage that here in Q4?
Yeah, TikTok Shop's insane. So we've got probably about 10 clients, I would say, off the top of my head that are on it now, mainly US based, because obviously they got access to it first, right?
Yeah,
But some of the numbers we're seeing, we onboarded a new client at the start of this month. They're actually Manchester based, and they built their entire business off a TikTok shop, and Shopify was just completely on the back burner. These guys were doing like 100 grand a month on TikTok shop before they even had any traffic going to their website.
no
Like
way.
TikTok Shop is a monster, and it reminds me of like Meta back in like in the early days, like 2016ish, when Meta was when everyone all the drop shippers was jumping on Meta, and it was this new cool thing, and CPMs was so cheap and CPAs were so low. TikTok Shop is like we're seeing for a client we've got in America in Florida. They're like a body oil brand, like a beauty brand, I guess, and they get like $2 CPAs on TikTok Shop at scale. So
Wow.
it's a monster. It's scary, and I think that it's only going to get better as well. Obviously, it'll get more competitive, right? And it'll be the same as Facebook, where it'll be the survival of the fittest, and your content's going to have to improve, and the CPMs might improve, but it's just such a no. It's like telly shopping back in the day. Like my mum, for example, loves it. She's every time I go home, she's sat on her phone buying stuff on TikTok Shop that she doesn't even need just because she loves the hype of it. So it's like it reminds me of when I was a kid and telly shopping, like when people just used to sit and buy stuff on the TV.
QVC.
Yeah, yeah, that's what it reminds me of. It's insane, man. It's a monster, and I think that this Q4 it'll bring like a different element to it because obviously it'll be the first Q4 where it's like it's this big. Do you know what I mean? So I think it'll be interesting to see what impact it has on Black Friday and peak periods this year.
So you mentioned you had like 24 or 5 brands. You have about 10 of them on TikTok Shop. What's prohibiting the other 15?
I think that TikTok Shop's one of them where if the shoe fits, it fits really well. But I don't think it's ever going to be a place. I'm not sure if it's ever going to be a place for like higher AOV brands that have a longer consideration phase, and the customer journey might take a little bit longer. I don't think it's for them. I think TikTok Shop and TikTok ads in general, from what we see with our client base, it performs better with that shorter customer journey, that impulse purchase, that they see an ad and they buy right away versus maybe an AOV that's over £100 that takes 2 to 3 months to acquire from awareness. So that's what's prohibiting some from getting on there. But yeah, that's kind of the main thing I would say.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, we have a couple of brands that are also using TikTok Shop, and some of them are like killing it as well. And it's a lot of tanning brands, a lot of beauty brands. I think it's, videos that where you can see something change immediately. Yeah, I think they're the brands that will kill it on a platform like TikTok Shop when you can create that creative that, just shows quite a drastic change, or not a drastic change, but a quite a visible change immediately. They seem to be the ones that are doing it the best at right now. I actually saw a really interesting stat during the week that I think in February, 84% of purchasers on TikTok Shop were repeat purchasers.
Yeah.
So that retention is there as well. And I think people might have a perception that it is only, that really young demographic of people on there. But as you mentioned, your mum was on there, and I don't think it's as young of a demographic only on TikTok Shop as people might think. And I think there's a good opportunity in, I suppose, a lot of people having that perception based into that non-reality to an extent.
Yeah. Well, it is from what we've seen, and it is kind of those beauty, health and wellness brands that are doing the best on there. The lower AOV, the more impulse purchase. But we did have a client in the beauty space who tried it, and their AOV was a little bit more on the luxury side of things for kind of hair oil, which was like £50 a bottle. And she just never had any success with it. But then I hear about some hair oil brands where the AOV is like £10 to £15, and they're just killing it. And I think that goes, obviously, it points back to what I just said about the more impulse buy. I think that people just go there looking for a bargain. I think it's like people that just want those really low hanging fruit bargains, and they just love the thrill of finding a good deal. I think that's what TikTok Shop is at this point.
Nice, nice, nice. When it comes to the creative process, what are most people getting wrong? Or maybe not even your own clients, but writ large in the industry, from a creative process, what are a lot of people getting wrong that they just don't even realize that they're getting wrong?
Well, I think the first thing has to be like the just a lack of understanding around the importance of it. Like
Mm.
people dismiss it a lot, and I see it all the time when we're having like initial conversations. People don't understand the importance of it. They're like, is it really that important? Like, do we really need that much creative? So I think that's the main thing that people are getting wrong, dismissing the importance of it because like that's dangerous. And then second to that, I think just a lot of the time a mistake that I see that founders and people in house at brands do is that they're producing content that they want rather than what the customer wants. For example, like that's something that we've seen, and then when we come in as a marketing team and we're trying to produce content based on what we're reading from their reviews, what their customer might want, and these kind of things, there's always kickback on it, and there's that push and pull between what we want to produce and what the customer wants to see as well. So I think that's something that a lot of brands are getting, and I think also just volume, like they'll produce a couple of videos a month, a couple of bits of UGC, and they just put their feet up and waiting for the money to roll in. But again, it is really a volume game. The more content you can produce, the better position you're going to be in. So
How do you balance the fact that you need so much content, which isn't cheap to produce, with the fact that, there's one winner in every 97? How do you balance those unit economics with a brand? Because, content, volume of content, it's phenomenal. That's exactly what everybody needs. It's easy to say, hard to execute on.
yeah, I think that you just have to be clever and be efficient with your production systems. When we say that you need to produce a lot of content, we're not saying that you need to have a new shoot every day with a different model, and you don't have to spend thousands on high production like shoots with the best photographers in the country. Like you can just be clever and be efficient. You can produce statics at scale. You can produce so many video ads from the same raw content, just edited in a different way with different text overlays and different hooks. And there's so many ways that you can cheapen the cost of that production in a way that doesn't harm the quality of the content, of course. So I think it's just about being clever and being efficient with your production system and understanding that you don't have to, yeah, hire the most expensive videographers and that kind of thing.
And are you seeing much difference in terms of creative performance between, the really high bar, high quality, high production versus often the less polished creative is working just as well, or even in a lot of cases better? Is that much of a split depending on, I suppose, the brand itself, or are you seeing one type of creative format working better than others?
There's never like one type of creative format because it's different for every brand and
Yeah,
that kind of thing. But 100% we do see like it happens all the time where brands will produce like such amazing visual content that looks so premium and great, and then it just gets beat by like a note static. Do you know what I mean? Like something that takes like a second to produce and they can make it inside a Canva. We do see that a lot, and it does annoy a lot of brand owners, but it's like I just think that that's where the consumer is nowadays, especially with TikTok. That like people just want to see something authentic. They don't like. I remember a couple of maybe 4 or 5 years ago with Facebook, it was more about like high prod videos and things like that. But nowadays, people like authentic content, and I think banner blindness is at an all-time high now. Where if people feel like they're being sold to, they'll just scroll away. Versus like really authentic, easy to make, genuine like customer generated content, it stands out on a news feed in my opinion a lot more. So I think that yeah, we do see the lower production, easier to make stuff perform a lot better a lot of the time for sure.
it's like entertain, educate, sell in terms of hierarchy, in terms of how the video or the creative needs to be structured, I think.
For sure, for sure. And I think that's the problem with a lot of this like the UGC industry in the last probably 18 months has just become this like wild west where the UGC creators are just popping up out of here, there, and everywhere, and it's also fake now.
Yeah,
And it just you need to have a really good creator because if it comes across to the customer as fake, it doesn't look good for the brand. And I think
no.
that's the place we're in now, where we talk a lot to our clients about customer generated content, like finding a way to get your customers to provide raw videos that we can then use for ads because there is no way that that can ever come across as fake because it's real. These are real customers who are talking about their actual experience, right? They're not people who you paid 50 quid from Fiverr. Like these guys are really your customers. They're the biggest brand advocates you've got. So, and that comes across in the video, right? Like your your potential customers, they can feel that passion come across in your customer's tone. So that's why customer generated content works so much better.
Nice. Meta performance. Obviously it's consistently a hot topic across the board with everybody. Just broad strokes, kind of would love to hear your take on just 2024 in general. Like, I suppose we're seeing a very mixed bag with, I suppose, our own customers with StoreHero. It's such a mixed bag across the year. There's some people that are absolutely killing it. I would say broad strokes, most seven-figure brands are relatively flat this year. being honest about it. There's some people not doing well either, but I would say most people are kind of in that middle phase where they're not really up on last year, maybe marginally, but they're not really down either. It's kind of concentrated in the middle, quite flat growth across the year. I'm not just curious to kind of hear what you're seeing.
Yeah, it's the same thing. It's been, I would say, in the time that I've been in this industry, obviously, before I even founded a company, I worked for a couple of different agencies and did bits of drop shipping. So I've like probably 5 years in at this point, and I would say that like this is the worst I've seen it in terms of performance this year. Even like think back to like when iOS 14 happened, and that was a bloodbath. We had no visibility, but performance actually wasn't that different, right? Whereas now performance is bad. Like the market is the worst that I've seen it, especially in the UK. I feel like our US clients aren't hit as much with it, and they're kind of oblivious to how bad it actually is over in the UK. Like the UK at the moment is just it's bad. And but you're right. Like for example, the seven figure clients we've got are in that 5 to 10 mil annual range. They're just like so. They're just like maybe a little bit in front of where they was last year, maybe a little bit behind, but they're not suffering, I wouldn't say. They're just doing okay. But one conversation that we are having a lot now is like you can't get used to like 100% year on year growth every year, right? That growth that you've gotten used to in the last 5 years during the pandemic and everything else, it's not sustainable forever. Do you know what I mean? At some point you have to kind of accept that just surviving and just doing the same numbers as last year in a bad market is actually all right. So that's a conversation that we're having with some clients as well. It's being like, we're still fine. Like, yeah, we're not 100% up, but we're still up. Like, it's tough out there right now.
I think it depends what you want to measure as well, because we're probably both referring to net sales growth, or that's what we're probably talking about there, and we're talking about flatlining as well. But you could turn around to any of your brands tomorrow and drive way more sales to their business, but ultimately it would end up being a vanity metric, and really the business is set up initially to extract enterprise value on behalf of the business owner. And I think that's just still a piece that often still isn't into it isn't enough in the conversation. I feel still with an awful lot of D2C owners, they still want to push for more sales growth and more sales growth if they're flatlining, even though you could do that for them tomorrow morning, but it would massively come at the cost of profitability. And trying to balance those two conversations is, I suppose, it's a topic for a 5 hour podcast, really, but it's an interesting one. We're obviously seeing quite a lot as well.
What's the point?
Yeah.
Are we here for your ego, or like you were saying, to get a good exit one day and grow an extremely profitable business? Like, what are we doing? That's the most important question, because it's a conversation we're having a lot as well. It's like, yeah, we can grow the top line, but the bottom line isn't going to grow. It's going to go the other way. So what's the point? Like, we're going to create all this extra stress and all these extra problems to make less profit. It makes no sense. Makes no sense. And that is a conversation that we're having a lot as well. So yeah, that makes it's like we were just saying, it's one of them where I feel like people just think the top line grows, so the bottom line is going to grow, right? But that's not always the case, especially in markets like this.
Especially in markets like this. And again, I think it comes back to that just ever increasing CAC piece as well. And I think you touch on a couple of interesting points and people that have got used to that 100% year on year growth. But it was very different. Like, paid media is the fuel that drives an e-commerce business. And that business specifically, aside from the rest of your business, that business has changed profoundly. And that part of your business has got much more expensive in the last 2 years. And, you can't discount that when you're thinking about driving a profitable business, because it's just that's really the fuel that drives it. And if the fuel has got more expensive, you know, you need to tread carefully or box clever, whatever way you kind of want to call it. But it's a really interesting one. I mean, I think D2C Twitter sometimes can drive you know people to chase the wrong things as well. You didn't
Yeah.
make 100K last month because you see a Shopify screenshot of 100K last month. That does not mean the business owner made any money. They could be propped up on revenue-based financing to make that happen. And I see that more and more again. And, just making sure that you're not just trying to chase your own ego. Like you could be much better off with a lower revenue number and be more profitable rather than just knocking it out of the park, hitting your 6, 7 figures, whatever you want to hit for the sake of hitting it. There's so many different ways to skin it, but it's such an interesting point.
Yeah, and like the ego is the definitely a problem, isn't it? Because people just they want, like you said, they want to put them screenshots on Twitter and they want to put them screenshots on their Instagram story, but what's the bottom line saying? That's what we don't know. That's what we don't have. That's what we don't have insight to. So, and it's that's the frustrating thing when clients are like, I've seen this competitor put his triple whale screenshot on or his Facebook ad screenshot on, and if he's spending that at that ROAS, why can't we? And I'm like, but maybe we're making more profit than him. Like, it's just context. Without context, those screenshots don't mean anything to us. So we're basing everything that we're doing and the point of reference we have is a meaningless screenshot. It's like pointless.
And like, there's a lot of those brands that are, it's all rosy online, and like, I know for a fact for some of them, it's definitely not as well. They're being propped up left, right, and center. And if you were to try and chase what certain brands will be doing online, you'd end up in a similar position, which isn't what you're really looking for. Again, yeah, I think it's such an interesting point. But also, I just think the best operators aren't putting their screenshots anywhere near online. They're just silent. They go about their business, get the work done, and they're probably just boxing that bit clever.
Yeah, I don't understand. Aside from getting a stroke on your ego and feeling good when you get all the other business owners commenting, congratulating you, I don't understand what other pro there is to posting screenshots online. Like for me, I just feel like it's a bad thing, and it's going to bring awareness. It's going to bring people who are going to copy us. It's going to bring like I just as a business owner myself, it's something that I would never do. I would rather just like you said, tread carefully and go about my business in a way that maybe people don't know actually the numbers that we're doing because that's better for me and better for our growth, right? Versus everyone thinking that we're doing better than we are because all they see is our revenue, and then we have a load of copycats popping up left, right, and center. Like that's a problem. That's a big problem.
Yeah, 100%. If it's working so well, somebody else will think they can do it too. I suppose we're recording this on the 9th of August. I hate bringing it up, but it's not far away, BFCM. How are you guys kind of approaching that conversation? Is there any kind of top tips that you have for anyone listening today in terms of maybe getting their clients or their own brand ready for that peak season?
I think prep should you should be having the conversation now with your clients for
Yeah.
sure. By the end of August, all of our clients will have had our Q4 booklet and checklist sent over, which is just like a little PDF we put together. We did it last year and had a lot of success from it. And we basically advise them on what we think they should do, but also kind of just get a good idea of what they actually are going to do by the 1st of September so that we have 2 months of solid preparation and getting all of our ducks in a row versus like on the 2nd of November, then starting the conversation and, just not even having our front foot forward and just being reactive rather than proactive. So the earlier you start that preparation, the better. That's the first piece of advice I could give. But the second piece of advice I would say is with your offer, whatever you're running, just simplify it. Just dumb it down, simplify it because this is a period of time where there's too much for the consumer to think about for them to kind of understand a complex offer. Like just here's this discount site wide, the code's automatically applied. That's it. Like that always works better than different codes for different collections and different codes for organic versus email versus social and this lucky dip where you have to like no, it's just
Spin
too
the wheel.
confusing. Yeah, like it's just too confusing and we have this back and forth with clients every year where they have all these fancy ideas and this stuff that they've heard here, there, and everywhere, and but it'll sound so good and it'll be so cool, and I'm like, yeah, but it's, fancy fails. That's it. Simple scales. Like just do what's simple, dumb it down. That's what always performs the best. So that's what I would say. And then other tips I would say just make sure that come November, you've got a bank of winning creatives because your evergreen ads, from an advertising perspective, your evergreen ads are going to be the ones that really move the needle. It's not going to be a Black Friday creative because that comes and goes. And the evergreen ads are the ones with all the engagement and the learning. They're going to be the ads that are going to drive the revenue and are going to scale, right? So make sure that you've got a good bank of those and make sure that they're on and make sure that they're building engagement and learnings and just make sure that you've got a lot of ammunition is what I would say. You don't want to be spending loads on creative testing in October, panicking because you're like, we've not got enough winners here. We should have more winners. This should all be done this year from January, right? It shouldn't be getting rushed and panicked in October. So again, just about I guess that just again comes down to preparation, doesn't it?
Yeah, no, completely. Very interesting. Again, very much a through line of what they were chatting about at the event yesterday as well. Just in terms of simplicity of it, of the offer. Um, just don't make it too complicated. Keep it simple. People are in market. They're all shopping for gifts. They've probably been eyeing up the brand for a while. Just make it as easy as possible for them because every other brand will be doing that anyway. So, I think just to echo what you said there again makes complete sense. Listen, Charlie, really, really enjoyed that. If people are looking to get in contact with you, where can they find you?
You can find me on LinkedIn, Charlie Williams. Paradigm Media is a company name. That's kind of where I post the most and do the most talking. I'm not really on D2C Twitter. I'm there, but I'm not active there just because Twitter just annoys me a little bit, to be honest. Like we were saying about the ego and that kind of thing. So I kind of stay off Twitter, but LinkedIn's the best place to find me. Obviously, if you want to find Paradigm, paradigmmedia.uk is where you'll find us. And yeah, reach out and let's have a chat.
Brilliant. We'll drop the links to those in the show notes as well. Charlie, listen, thank you very, very much for coming on. That was really, really interesting.
No worries, mate. Thanks for having me. It was good to chat.
Cheers.